I want to do today, I want to clean inside by the fairing, where the fairing is. I don't want to shortchange myself on this. So today's project is going to be an oil change and filter on our 650 Ninja, 28,000 miles. And by the end of the day, we're hopefully ready for a test ride. Now today's project, we're going to do an oil change and filter change, clean the chain and adjust it on our 2009 Ninja 650R. This bike has been, I'm the original owner with Rob, my son-in-law, and we have had right now 11 going on 12 good years of service. And I try to maintain this bike to the best standard I possibly can. Now on my channel, we did the total restoration of this bike last year. It goes over many videos, but it shows every single part of the restoration. It's an 11 going on 12-year-old motorcycle, and I think it came out just exceptional. And I want to maintain it. It's one thing to make a bike very pretty, very attractive, very shiny. You used the right word. But to do the maintenance, and the biggest single maintenance you can do to keep a bike, if you're going to keep a bike forever, oil and filter. Now along with the oil and filter, I want to adjust the chain, and I want to do a thorough cleaning of it. The original chain on the bike lasted almost 20,000 miles, just under 20,000. I just looked at the record. We've had a new chain on it, and I've tried to maintain it, clean it and lube it. And I'm hoping I'm going to get another almost 20,000 out of this chain. But we're at 28,000, and it's a critical time to look over the bike, check that any of the parts that we restored or any of the parts that we haven't restored, that nothing's getting loose, nothing's rusty. I'll clean the sprocket. I like to do the maintenance and try to keep the bike as new and as fresh as possible. I never intend to flip these bikes. All the bikes in my collection I keep. I don't try to do things to them that are compromised in any way, because I want to ride these bikes. These bikes get ridden. I try to ride almost every day. I share the rides on my channel, of course, but I try to ride safe and reliable bikes and keep them that way, no matter what the age is. So step one on the oil change is take the bike out into the driveway and let it run, well, maybe 4 or 5 minutes till it comes up to operating temperature. Just makes the oil drain just a little bit easier. So while the bike is warming up, I have all the maintenance records for all of the motorcycles in my collection, and I'll update that now so I always know when I've done the oil and filter and maintenance and chain changes and the things. Here we go. Time to log everything in. Yeah, it usually takes a few minutes. I want it to be up to operating temperature because I want that as much of the oil, the old oil, to come out as quickly as possible. And this whole restoration, again, I've said it before, is on my channel. Might be some other parts of it you enjoy watching. Once it comes off fast idle, it's pretty much ready to go. Because my work area, I have old rugs, and these are certainly not rugs you'd want in your house, but just makes laying on the ground in cold weather a lot better. And whenever I do an oil change, there's a chance I'm going to spill something. So I always put down one of my spare rugs upside down with the rubber on the back. Easier to clean if I spill anything. Now I know there are people that can do an oil change on a white carpet, but the only problem is I'm not one of them. So having that rubber-backed rug, cheap insurance. This is another small tip. I always like to clean the oil pan. We can even clean it with paper towel so that the oil that comes out, I know if it were a sunny day and it's not, I could look into the oil and hold it up to the sun and see if I have all little specks, little metal flakes, if there's anything in that oil that looks abnormal. And if there was, then I'd have to start thinking, maybe something's going on there, or maybe I didn't do the last oil change when I should have. The manual calls for every 4,000 miles, every other one an oil filter, and we're going to do both today. Now one of the things I want to do today, I want to clean inside by the fairing, where the fairing is. I don't want to shortchange myself on this. So what I'm going to do, the first thing is remove this half of the lower fairing. It just makes doing the job just a little bit easier. I'm not sure anybody else would want to do this. You can reach in through the front and change the oil filter, but it's just nicer if you can do it this way. Now once you remove the last pop fitting on the bottom, this can come out, but it's very tricky and I don't want to scratch the paint. It goes further back. There's some tabs and tangs here that have to be addressed. There's one. There's the other one, and it comes right off. I'm in the way. It'll allow me to clean inside and out, both sides. With that part off, we have access to changing the oil filter very, very conveniently, and of course draining the oil. Now in the course of doing this, once the engine cools down, and once the new oil is in and everything's done, before I put the fairing back on, I'll make sure I polish this up, clean it up, get rid of any goop that's in here. There's always stuff in the bottom of the fairing. I just like to keep it clean. It just makes it easier to do the work on it and the maintenance. And there's always a few bugs or something on there. And when we had this bike all apart, it was with the front wheel not on, it was very easy to polish this. Now it's just maintenance from this point on. Now the drain plug is on the opposite side of the bike. You can see it's just in front of the muffler. And once I open that up, the oil is going to come out, and I'll have 4 or 5 minutes while I'm waiting for it to drain. And while I'm waiting for this, I can be cleaning up the fairing and getting the old oil filter off. And here we go. And that oil looks good and used. I don't know why, but I always just love having fresh oil in the bike. I don't know, it's just me. Just a couple of tips, things that make it a lot easier because you're working down in the dark here. The little Harbor Freight flashlight makes it a lot easier. And now when I think the oil is all out, I want to stand the bike up, sit on it, hold it straight up and down, and always a little bit more will come out. And this is one of the steps that just helps you get the last little bit of oil out of the bike. Maybe you only get a couple of spoonfuls, maybe you get, who knows, a shot glass full. But I want all that oil out of there, all the old dirty oil. We've gotten our money's worth out of it for sure. And a couple other little things that I know. I've tried to use, long ago, tried to use car oil that wasn't dedicated motorcycle oil, and I had clutch slippage issues and whatever. I always would recommend you buy a bike, you spend your good hard-earned money. If the manual says use synthetic oil, use synthetic oil. If it says use regular oil, use regular oil. Don't think you know more than sometimes you find out the hard way. But anyway, I try to avoid anything but using real motorcycle oil, whether it's Kawasaki, Suzuki, or Yamaha, or whoever makes it. But real oil that's dedicated to motorcycle use, and you won't have anywhere near the issues you have if you wind up using some other brand, or Pride of the West, or Pride of Poland, or whatever. Anyway, I'm going to do this for a minute or so and just let that oil drain out. And important, clean the drain plug as good as you can on the inside. You don't want anything going in there. Now some of the bikes, like the GS, have a magnet on the drain plug, and it's always good. What I'm doing right now, this one doesn't, but the GS does, to clean any of the residue, the metallic residue off of the drain plug. Now the oil filter is right behind the pipes, and I do have a dedicated wrench for that, but you don't really need one. You can get in there with a long nose socket. And having the filter wrench just makes it a little bit easier. Again, if you're we're going to change the oil and not the filter, which they recommend every other time, but I'm kind of fanatical. I like to change the filter every time. So for me, I get used to this routine, and while I have this half of the fairing off, it gets me access to all this area that would be very hard to clean. And the filter with the filter wrench with the long extension makes pulling that filter off pretty easy. And needless to say, it's always good if you have gloves on, because these pipes are hot, the engine is still hot, and the oil is hot. So you always want to have a little bit of coating of oil around that gasket. At this point, with this half of the fairing off, it's relatively easy to get in there and get it started by hand. and we can just sock it up with the extension. Now they always warn you about making the oil filter too tight. I guess it's in the eye of the beholder here. I always make it as tight as I think it should be. Let it sit for a minute or so and then just snug it up just a little bit more. Nothing's worse than if you don't tighten the drain plug or that the right way and somewhere down the road it starts dripping or leaking. That can ruin your whole day. Now my town, I take and put this oil, the old oil, from all of these oil changes. Believe me, we go through a lot of oil every year. We're like the Exxon Valdez here. I put it in a gallon jug, a milk jug, of which we have plenty, and once or twice a year they have a recycle day in our town. I just bring it down there and let them recycle it. I'd rather have that than have it in my yard. Now, it wasn't really sunny enough out there to see if there was any little metal chips in that. Little sparkles, I call them. But anyway, the drain plug is back in, the oil filter's torqued down. The pan is clean for the next oil change, and what seems like with a small motorcycle collection, there's no end to the oil changes. And I want to go get the oil, and there's a couple of good tips on filling the oil. Now here's some really good tips and things you don't think would really matter, but they do. And one of the things I know, no manufacturer I know of recommends putting more oil in than what the little sight window shows. So again, if you look in the manual and it says the bike takes 3.5 quarts of oil, don't put 4.5 in. Now I like to put it in little by little. And then the key thing is to stand the bike up straight and see if the oil is in the middle of the window. Now, once it's in the middle of the window, I want to run the bike for about a minute, let it circulate into the oil filter, let it sit for a minute so the oil all drains down, and see where it is in the sight window. And then little by little, just top it off. I don't want to just say, hey, 4 quarts, the bike takes 2 quarts, and put it in. I don't want to do that. Now, I have in the past, I was very cute about this at one time, and I don't know why I did it. I measured the oil coming out, and the factory manual is pretty close. If you're in the middle of the sight window and it says, like on a GS, it says 3.7 or something, and you put 3.7 in, well, what's going to happen? It's going to be higher on the sight window until you run the bike, and then it'll come back down. But you're not doing yourself a favor putting an extra quart of oil in the bike. If it's in the middle of that sight window, you're in good shape. Now, I don't have a bike that burns a lot of oil, but if I had one that burned a lot of oil, I'd want to go to the top of the sight window. But if you're not burning oil, one of the downsides, and it's a real big downside on some bikes, when you put too much oil in or the wrong oil, when you're in neutral and you go to put the bike in gear, clonk, and you can hear it just clunking. It should just, that's usually telling you have a warped clutch, could be number one, too much oil, the wrong kind of oil, or the oil isn't warmed up yet, or any combination of them. And I know several people, even including Jose, who is an experienced rider, who's told me that some of his bikes, when you go to put them in gear, you just, and now this bike is butter. It just goes into gear. So I know the first thing, if it doesn't shift right or something's not right, first thing I'll check is that I didn't put too much oil in. And that is a really, really good tip. Now another little, I just think they're just useful tips that, as I'm getting ready to top this off, I always use Yamalube. The reason is when I bought the R1 in 2009, the whole manual went over and over and over about using Yamalube, not chemical oil, in the R1. I had just paid a lot of money for a new bike. I didn't want to compromise it in any way. And so I've always known the price of Yamalube, buying it from dealers and different outlets and different things. And just recently, I found out, Karen was on Amazon Prime buying other stuff. I said, let me see what Yamalube costs on Amazon Prime. It's $1 a gallon cheaper and no shipping. So all these years I've been paying more money and I could have it shipped right to my house. In fact, the last time I did, I bought four gallons of it, had it shipped right to the house. And it was cheaper than if I went to a dealer and then waited in line and had to deal with them and everything. So just a little tip that may be useful. Now I'm just waiting for this to go down. I'm going to start looking in the sight window and seeing just how close I am. Now you always have to remember what's in the sight window. You don't have the oil filter filled up yet. Now, so even when I'm in, I'm just coming up on it a little bit more. And then what's going to happen, it's hard to do this, I'm doing it by myself, of course. If you have a helper that can hold the bike for you, it's really nice. Pay him. I'm not sure, when you work alone, things are a little tentative. Okay, we're about halfway through, just a little less. I'm going to add a little bit more and then run the engine. All right, the oil light just went out. It means now we have oil pressure. Oil is going into the oil filter. I'm going to let this run about 30 seconds. I put the ceiling fan on because it's looking like it's going to rain any minute outside. Now the catch is, the trick is, I'm going to let this sit for a few minutes. I'll probably go have a cup of coffee or something, clean up here. I can clean up the all the tools and everything. But then I want to carefully check where that oil level is and either add a little, reduce it a little. Usually you have to add a little because now we've taken that oil from the crankcase and put it into the oil filter. Get that right about in the middle where I'm going to be happy with it. Then after the first maybe 2 or 3 rides, just monitor it to make sure it didn't go up or down. If it goes down, obviously, you have a loose oil filter, a loose drain plug, or the bike is burning oil. If it goes up, God knows what could be happening. You could be losing water from the radiator into the oil and any number of things. A carbureted bike, you could be losing gas into the oil where the oil level goes up, and it can happen. A frozen petcock and the gas is just filling with the gas is going into the oil. A lot of things. It tells you on those first 2 or 3 rides how everything is, and that's the whole idea of doing all this monitoring is I want these bikes to last forever. They're a lot of money, and I enjoy taking care of them because I know they're going to last, for in my case, for the rest of my life. Now while I'm waiting for that oil to drain down, I can put a cleanup in and out on this. Now I must have gone through an area where they were retarring the road because inside the fairing I took a scraper and scraped out a handful of tar that, well, it's just, I don't want to have it. And cleaning these up, just a little bit of maintenance now. I got to hang out here anyway. Karen's got coffee brewing, so the point is the bottom of this fairing usually takes quite a beating. Sometime if I'm doing this and I'm waiting, I'll run a buffing wheel over it just to clean up any of the scratches. And usually that's why on most sport bikes they make the bottom of this flat black, I guess, so I don't want it flat black because it's easy to maintain. Nothing for me is easy to maintain. If it was easy, everybody'd have a bike collection and no maintenance. You'd have a mechanic like Jay Leno does. Somebody you just say, hey, fix that, do this. In my case, just never played out that way with my life. Anyway, when these are all clean, I'll do the other one. I don't have to take the other one off the bike. But you do have to take, well, I guess there's some people that can take the oil filter off without taking one fairing off. Hey, better for them. I like having one fairing off. It allows me now, I'm going to go in there while I'm waiting and clean up in there. I don't want to put this all back together while it's all greasy. So if you have a similar bike to this, I can share a really good tip with you. When you go to put the side flow of fairing on after an oil change, put it up on the center stand, get the kickstand out of the way. Because these tabs here, when you're trying to maneuver this piece around, and those tabs, what happens, that kickstand is in the way and you tend to bend the piece, and it could be, it's very possible you could crank it. When you have it on the center, on that stand, well, a lot less chance you're going to do that. And these pieces obviously all snap right in, so if they don't snap, it's a good idea not to force them. So we finally got it exactly the way we want it. That couldn't be any better. So I'm just old school enough that I want to let it sit at least 5 minutes running in the driveway. Make sure I don't even have one drop of oil coming out anywhere, dripping, drooling, whatever. Then I want to check the oil level. And it looks like we may even, well, I'm not sure what Karen has planned, but may get a short test ride and then I'll recheck that oil level. Now one thing that can happen in this kind of an oil change, especially on this bike, the pipe is right near the drain plug. You can get a couple of drops of oil on a pipe, and when you start it the first time, there'll be some smoke. Well, really there's nothing to worry about there. It'll burn right off. But the one thing I would never do is just jump on a bike and go for a long ride until I know everything is nice and tight. And what I've been doing lately is just, I forgot to put it on the video, 1 drop of Loctite, blue Loctite on all the fairing screws. And that's just cheap insurance that we're going to have a lot more reliable riding out of this bike. And like every bike in my collection, it's a bike I want to keep forever. They're not flippers, they're not traders, they're keepers. Just clean up the mess. There's always a mess. I use some simple green just to get this ready for the next oil change. So thanks a lot for watching. We try to share every day if we can, almost every day, the passion that we all seem to share for motorcycles, in my case mostly old motorcycles, and our MT-09, which is our latest child, the latest addition to our little collection. We try to share the information, some of the stuff we've learned the hard way, some of the stuff we've learned from people like Luciano, other mechanics, Vince, Glenn. We've learned some of the stuff, maybe a lot of it, from YouTube, and thank you to all the people that contribute all the information that's on YouTube. Thank you guys so much. But the biggest person or persons that I want to thank, the men and women that have kept us healthy during this crazy pandemic. I hope it's over soon, I really do. I hope your family's as healthy as mine is. My family has made it through so far. We've been pretty much sequestered for this whole time. But anyway, we did get out many of those days and get a motorcycle ride. We did get work in the shop, and we've been to a couple of meetups. They're all on my channel. I try to share the passion that I have for motorcycling. You wouldn't be watching this channel if you didn't have a passion for motorcycling too. So we do have something in common. And again, thanks for watching. I enjoy making the videos. I hope you share them with your friends. And again, thanks for watching. So we do try to post up a new video almost every day. And here's what's going to be coming up soon. We have some more carbon fiber work to do on the MT-09. That's coming up soon. I got carburetors to put on the new Mikuni carburetors for the RD. A lot of shop projects as we get into the fall of the year here. But the big thing, I want to maintain all the motorcycles. These are not flippers. I keep them. I love them. I'm passionate about them. And I enjoy sharing my life and my adventures with you on YouTube. Hope you enjoyed them. And the most thing of all, thanks for watching.